You know, back when I was 19 years old, I was given the best piece of advice that I've ever received. I was told, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. Let's talk about that. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today I'm joined by my wonderful friend, Dr. Amit Anand. Amit is a board-certified practitioner of pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine at Beth Israel Lahey Healthcare System, Boston, Massachusetts. He obtained his MBBS degree at the Seth GS Medical College in Bombay, India in 1989. He proceeded to complete his internship and residency in internal medicine, as well as a fellowship in sleep medicine at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, Massachusetts. He also trained as a fellow in pulmonary and critical care medicine at the Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. These are teaching-affiliated hospitals of Harvard Medical School. He completed a master's in clinical investigation from the combined MIT-Harvard Medical School program. He has held academic positions at Harvard Medical School, Tufts University, and Boston University School of Medicine for more than 25 years. I'm not buying that you're that old, Amit. I'm really not. He is an instructor in primordial sound meditation, Chopra Center for Wellbeing, and a Yoga Alliance teacher of the Amrit yoga method. He has learned from and worked with many preeminent yoga teachers in the world. He is particularly interested in the doctrine of pranayama, which is breath extension and control techniques as taught at the, you're going to have to pronounce this one for me, buddy.
Kaivalyadham Institute.
Thank you. Of Yoga, Lonavala, India, given his background in pulmonary and sleep physiology. He is the founder of breathinance.com and pranayamarx.com. Amit, I'm so happy you're joining me today, sir. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Daryl. It's great to see you. Anytime I speak with you, it just invigorates me, even though we're a distance apart, you're no longer in Massachusetts. It just lights up my day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I agree. Every time I see you or speak with you or we go out for dinner or whatever it is, it just brightens everything. And who knew, right? 20 some years ago when we met, I was looking at some of these things, the primordial sound meditation, which you taught me. And I'm not even sure how many years ago that was, 20 something.
Yep.
And also taught Christina, my wife. And we did the Amrit yoga at Beth Israel for a while, which was very cool. And now breathinance, which you also taught Christina and me. So it's you have been a life-changing force for me and for Christina and Andrew, one of our sons. Absolutely. So thank you for that. And we both very much appreciate it. And we practice every single day. So you lit the right fire for us.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. It's been so nice that you guys have stuck with it. And, it's really heartwarming that Andrew's also picked it up, because I think that's where, some of these wisdom practices now validated by science stand to hold their own ground. Not only, in the yoga community, but also in the medical realm with folks like us who are all experiencing a lot of burnout. So, and the next generation needs it the most, especially what they've gone through over the last few years. So I'm so happy Andrew's doing it.
He is. And, he has a 9-month-old, our grandbaby. And, I just think about passing these things on and moving them through the people that we know and the ideas and the practices and just the beauty of, because the world gets more busy and more is expected of us and it gets louder and we can either go into that or, and something that I needed to choose to do, which I did many, many years ago, is be able to find the quiet, right? We have to make our best attempt, I believe, to find the quiet in the midst of all the noise.
Absolutely true. Yeah, it's almost like by virtue of being human, you have to bear these responsibilities in our daily lives in the waking state. Uh, but then they contribute to a lot of stress, especially in the nervous system, that transforms the way we relate with each other, the way we relate with ourselves, and the kinds of patterns of wellness and disease that we manifest in our bodies, our minds, and certainly it affects us at night. So it becomes this almost this treadmill you sometimes can't get yourself off, but finding time to get off, especially with some of these practices, to make that attitude of silence a behavior that is important for us, can be very valuable for us and our loved ones.
Absolutely. I'm sure I told you this because it meant so much to me, but before Breath-Ins and Pranayama RX, what you had taught me in terms of the primordial sound meditation, I looked at that literally, and I spoke this and I've written about it. It's like oxygen. Once you start having it, it's you almost can't go back, because it's such a beautiful quieting practice. And one of the things that I found, and I think is absolutely true, is whatever time we spend, going through these practices, and I do my breath work and my meditation in the morning, and it could be 45 minutes, it could be an hour. Sometimes I just don't want to leave my meditation, so I don't leave, which is kind of cool because interesting things show up. But that time reverberates through the entirety of the rest of my life, and every interaction that I have and everybody I talk to, and it reverberates, and the time commitment compared to the benefit it's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable because it's not much time.
It's so cool for me to hear you say that, because I've been doing this now for almost 30 odd years. Uh, Growing up in India, I was given my word of wisdom by my mother, not really appreciating what it meant, because I was 5 years old when I was given my sound, my word of wisdom, as I said, my mantra. And I used to use it as a crutch to kind of get through the tough parts of my life, exams, tests, medical issues. And then suddenly it kind of hit me that maybe if I spend a little time doing this a little more consistently, I might not fall sick. I might relate better. I might do easier on the test taking. And this light bulb went off um, for me, that maybe this needs to become my daily practice. And obviously, when you're young, there's so many things pulling at you, and there's not a whole lot of time for stuff like this. But it started to really become the work of my day. And when that happened for me, the rest of the day became like a game, like a play. It became easier. So each one comes to this at their own different time, Daryl. I know you are one of my first students, and you got it very early in the game. Uh, but I don't force this on anyone. I've learned that, knowledge is in the domain of the seeker, and they will only come to it when they're ready for it. But I will tell you, and, obviously from your experience and mine, uh, when you make this the work of your day, your life will change.
100% absolute satisfaction guarantee. Yeah, true. And like you said, people need to come to it in their own time. And I 100% agree with that, because I could put this in front of a lot of people, and, a few would want to pick it up. A few would be ready for it, but many wouldn't. Many would not understand. I term it as, it's not a medical term, but it's sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
You have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired before you decide to change. That's what happened to me. I had investigated several, John Kabat-Zinn and other meditators and Thich Nhat Hanh, and nothing really resonated for me in terms of those practices, but primordial sound meditation did. And that was, the timing for me couldn't have been better. And I went to the Chopra Center site back then, and I found you, who was 10, 15 miles away from me. And we've been wonderful friends ever since, which is just such a cool thing. So, and I'm grateful for it all the time, every day.
Thank you so much.
Truly. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your story, I know, we've talked so much over the years in terms of really both of our stories and from whence we came and our aspirations and things that we wanted to do. I know breathance has been a dream for you for a long time. It may not have been called that necessarily, but I love the name.
Mm-hmm.
How did Amit get from way back when, been given your mantra, to starting breathance, and what did that journey look like for you?
Sure. So I grew up in Bombay, now called Mumbai, India. Went to medical school there, and during my medical curriculum, patient care excited me. It fascinated me. It was also a huge responsibility for a young student, taking care of someone who was vulnerable, who was entrusting their life in my hands, if you will. So it kind of, hit me very young that, this is sacred work. And when I was starting to figure out, what do I want to be as a provider? Am I going to be an internist? Am I going to be a cardiologist? Am I going to be, something else? The ICU experience in the intensive care unit, which was also in its infancy, really, at that time in the 80s and the early 90s in India, struck with me for a long time. There's a disease called tetanus. And most of us living in the US probably will never see this. Most of us who trained in US medical schools and work in hospitals won't see this, is because people get vaccinated at birth against tetanus. But in India, they don't. And I saw nearly 350 to 400 cases of tetanus a year during my training in the ICU. And that's a disease where, God forbid you get stuck by a rusty pin, or, you're born in a field and your mom cuts the umbilical cord with a stone. That toxin takes root in the nervous system and creates a really painful syndrome where the spine starts to arch, your breath starts to get constrained because you can't move your diaphragm and your rib cage, but you are fully conscious. You are fully conscious while you are going through this. So it's such a painful state to watch that, when we would get people in the ICU, we'd have to put them down, put them on machines to breathe for them until the toxin washed off in their system, sometimes, 3-4 weeks later. And they were emaciated when we got them off the machine, and their spasm and the toxin had sort of left the system. The first thing that they would say is, oh, to take a deep breath again, to breathe without pain. And that struck with me. And I realized that, breath is something we take for granted as human beings. It's the first thing we do when we are born into this world, as surely as it will be the last thing we do when we leave. From the first cry to the last gasp, if you are lucky to live to a lifespan of 80 years of age, breathing at a rate of 16 breaths per minute, which is 960 breaths in an hour, or 23,040 in a day, or 8.5 million in a year.
Wow.
That would translate into 672,768,000 breaths in a lifespan.
Wow.
And it's just happening. And it's just happening. And you don't have an appreciation for breath until you are diseased by breath, like that patient with tetanus was. And to hear them say, just to breathe again without pain, it was an eye-opening thing for me. I said, why aren't we taught how to breathe in medical school? We still don't do it. In this day and age, at the medical curriculum at Harvard, we don't teach people how to breathe. We teach them to investigate disorders of breath when they can't breathe. In fact, the sicker you are, probably the more excited I will in learning your pathophysiology. But we don't know how to breathe as humans. And so that kind of stuck with me, through my sort of growing up phase in the medical curriculum. And I came to the US in the early 90s. And I actually trained with Deepak, Dr. Chopra, at his clinic in Lancaster, Massachusetts at the time, sort of embracing my Indian roots of Ayurveda, which is, the yogic wisdom tradition of medicine. And it kind of struck me that here's this tradition which teaches us, the tenets of breath work, the tenets of body work, the tenets of meditation. And my medical training was bereft of all of this. And as I sort of re-credentialed in the US at Harvard and during my residency and my fellowship years, it always gnawed at me. How do I integrate this? Integrate this part of my learning with this part of my learning and my upbringing. And finally, it came to pass that, I researched in breath at the Mass General. I had some wonderful teachers who would teach me the nuances of breath without even knowing that they were teaching me that. And then, obviously, over the last few years, my subspecialty work, which is all glued by breath, whether it's in the ICU, whether it's in the outpatient clinic with pulmonary and sleep medicine, it's all breath. I became fascinated with pranayama as the doctrine of breath work in the yogic tradition. And I was doing it with the intention of, really bringing validation to some of these techniques through research. Would study this on myself, would study this on some of my patients anecdotally, and then kind of created this platform whereby which, I would teach the naive breather, most of us who've never done breath work, the basic tenets of wisdom tradition that is 6,000 years old, but done with emphasis on the safety and the science, because that's really important as far as I'm concerned, so that it can impact us in the waking state, in the sleeping state, and make us happier and healthier human beings, so that we're not over-reliant, on the magic bullet approach, but it's almost like a preventative practice that it helps us be happier, be healthier breathers, but it affects all aspects of our health through the autonomic nervous system. And so that's how Breathinance was born. I started doing a lot of this work, obviously during the pandemic, and just with all the stress that we were experiencing as a species, but in the medical community with my therapists, with my students, with my fellows, with my nurses, and then with my patients. And I found that, it did help. And it kind of just, reinforced that this was where I needed to go, what I needed to do, what I needed to be. And then with Clint and me sort of, meeting serendipitously in Boston about 18 months ago, he sets the musical rhythms to the practice of breathwork. He's from the Berklee School of Music in Boston. And he took the online course and said, music can be the metronome to some of these practices, just like it is with Peloton when you're working out. I said, aha, why not? And so that's how breath work with musical rhythms became Breathinance. Breath, resonance, one word, Breathinance. So I'm excited to share this journey. Obviously, you and Christina have gone through this, Andrew has too, but with the globe at large, my patients, the next generation of breathers, anyone in any realm of endeavor, whether it's the athlete looking to get an edge, whether it's the patient looking to get better with their health in the hospital, in the outpatient setting. There's so many applications for this, Daryl. I can't even tell you. But that's my story in a nutshell.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I look at it like it's your market is anyone who breathes air.
Yes, sir.
Seems to be a fairly large marketplace.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I obviously I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge, and I'm a practitioner at, excuse me, as you were speaking, I was thinking about a story. Harold Kushner, trying to think of the name of the book, but I can't think of the name of the book, but he talks about a guy from the US going to, and I'm going to paraphrase this story, but it's a great story. And then I've got a follow-up story that has to do with my experience with breath work. But so this guy from the US goes to India, and there's going to be a celebration at the top of a mountain. And he trains a little bit before he goes, and it's like, you know what, I'm ready to go. I'll climb this mountain. I'll get to the top. Everything will be great. We'll do our little celebration. And he gets there, and he starts climbing this mountain, and he's climbing with a gentleman that's significantly older than him. And the gentleman that's significantly older than him is just kind of hoofing up the mountain. No big deal. No problem. And he's watching all these other people carrying loads and carrying children, and they're passing him up, and he's exhausted and he can't breathe. And he said, well, what's going on? He said to his friend, what's going on? I don't understand. Why I'm in shape. I'm younger than a lot of these people. What's happening? And the older gentleman said, well, these people look at the mountain as their friend, as opposed to something that they have to overcome. And that's a beautiful story. So this leads into, I live up in the mountains now in Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's about 1.5 miles from where we enter our development to where we live. And I walk down there 2 or 3 days a week, and I walk back up. And on my way down, I'm reassuring myself that the mountain is my friend, because it's very difficult. But the thing that has helped me the most, Amit, and this is the reason for my story, is when I pay attention to my breath and I breathe with my belly and I slow my breath down, in addition to verifying that the mountain is my friend, it's amazing how my heart rate stays at a lower level, how the climbing itself is significantly easier. And it's a beautiful experience as opposed to an arduous one.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's about the rhythm of breath resonating with the rhythm that is life, not only within, but out there. In fact, when you get into your resonant rhythm, Daryl, and for the human being, that's anywhere between 4 to 7 breaths per minute. And we're normally breathing twice that. When you figure that out, whether it's at rest or with exertion, everything changes. At resonant frequency breathing, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate drops, your oxygen saturations shoot through the roof, as does your heart rate variability if you were to monitor it on a wearable Apple or a Whoop or an Aura. More importantly, you become an upright breather. If you choose nostril over mouth breathing, you become a peaceful, more centered, more calm breather, even though you're in the midst of exertion. And that's what breath work is about. It's about embracing the tenets of the practice to become a slow, initially large volume and then low volume, upright nostril breather, but it's about finding your rhythm. And when you are in rhythm, everything changes, both internally as well as your relationship with the outside. That's beautiful. I love it.
It's amazing. It really is. And I think it's important to understand, and I've had to understand over time, that just because we pick up a practice, whatever that practice is, it takes some time to integrate, and it takes some time to, I was fortunate because the meditation, loved it. Here I go, I'm gone. The breath work, here I go, I'm gone. But everything goes deeper, always. Everything goes deeper. And so there is no finish line. There is no, okay, I'm done. You know, I'm all set. I got this whole breath thing down. I got this whole meditation thing down.
Yeah.
It's lifelong. And that is the beauty of it, because and not that I have the opportunity to practice this forever. And it's just such a beautiful thing. And I, there's times when I have to remind myself, and I'm doing it now as we're talking, breathe through your nose, and, and horizontally breathe as opposed to vertically breathe. Right. And I think you said it to me. I'm not sure. Maybe it was in one of your trainings, but our mouth is for talking and eating.
Yeah.
And our nose is for breathing, right? That's how it works.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you said it beautifully. I mean, it's a lifelong journey. There is no end game. The end game is the journey. The journey is the destination. So why not just enjoy the journey along the way and incorporate some of these time-tested practices to make it more fun, to make it just much more relatable with the people you love, the people you care about, and the world around you. So, yeah, beautifully said, Daryl.
Thank you. More fun, I think, is huge, and it's crucial, and it's important. For me to have fun, normally, I have to be at peace, and I have to have a sense of contentment and a sense of fulfillment that's pervading my life and rippling through my life and is the undercurrent of my life. And these practices are what do that. I don't know, as you know, I have a history of I've been sober for a long time, alcohol, drugs, all that sort of thing. And I was able to get out of that a long time ago, but that doesn't make me better. That's the Band-Aid when I get sober. But pardon me for saying this. Well, the wound is, the bullet hole is all the other stuff inside of me that I need to fix.
Yeah.
And that needs to be healed, and whatever that is. And I know we talk a lot these days about traumas and how we're raised and all the things that we saw that, may have affected us in different ways, and different things affect different people. But there has to be that quieting. I can go at a task. I can go 1,000 miles an hour, as you know, Mr. Pitta, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell everybody what that is in a second, but that's the way I'm built. I'm built to go at things hard. I'm built to go at things relentlessly. And my balance is, for me to feel contented and fulfilled, I have to balance that with the quiet and with the breath and with the paying attention, so that I can be more effective. And so that's one part of contentment and fulfillment. But the other part of contentment and fulfillment is, how are my relationships in this world? How am I relating to people? Am I able to be quiet enough to offer a smile to somebody on the street, to help somebody if they need help, to quiet myself enough to strike up a conversation at the gas station. And those kinds of things are very indicative of how things are going in here. And breath-mints contributes greatly to how things are going in here.
So true. In fact, I tell my patients all the time, especially people who are in the caregiving mode, when they have to take care of a loved one, an ailing parent, a sick child. I said, you cannot help anyone unless you help yourself first. You are of no use to anyone if you are devoid of stillness, of energy. And sometimes the most selfless love that you can give to anyone else is the selfish act of self-work. And it's not selfish. It's actually selfless if you think about it. You have to look after yourself before you can give of yourself to others. And that's where, this finding the balance is so critical for all of us, because we're always in the outer world, pulled in 100 different directions, multitasking, if you will. But finding the time, the space for yourself, just to still the experience, still the breath, still the mind, to find that groundswell of inner silence, inner peace, inner love. You still have to do the work, but at least it gives you the awareness in which direction you want to channel your energy. And then you find that you channel it appropriately. Well, of these 100 things, maybe 90 of them don't need my immediate attention. They're not going anywhere. They'll be waiting for me in a month from now, but these 10 need my immediate attention. So it becomes very valuable in providing clarity in terms of how you lead your life, how you help others, if that's what you do in the caregiving world. So I agree that, helping yourself is the first step in helping others. And practices like this go a long way towards that goal.
They absolutely do. And I look at my life at this point and have for some time now. I want to help other people. And that's why I do what I do now with books and things like that. And this podcast, if there's a seed that can be planted in somebody sometime from what you or I say on this podcast, we've done our job. And hopefully that's more than one person, but and I'm sure it's going to be. There's a quote that I love when I first started trying to change myself. Actually, I was probably trying to change my life before I was trying to change myself. But unfortunately, I found that it doesn't work that way. It's not that easy. You gotta go inside first. And the quote is, "To thine own self be true." And I used to hear that all the time. People would say, "Oh, to thine own self be true," this and that. You gotta do it for yourself first, and then you can help others. And I thought, yeah, that's great. But the rest of that quote is, and it's from Hamlet, Shakespeare. The entire quote is, and it must follow, or I'm sorry, I'll start again. To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man.
Mm.
And that's such a beautiful quote because if I'm being true to myself, that means I'm being true to life and to the planet and to others. And when I'm not being true to myself, I can be flailing, I can be unsupportive of others, I can be not giving because I'm too worried about me, that sort of thing. And that quote has helped me more often than I can say in terms of just understanding exactly what you said, Amit. I can't give to others unless I can first give to me. And I believe that is our charge in life, to be able to give to ourselves so that we can plant those seeds and help be a conduit to helping others.
Yeah, no, you are such a compassionate and kind human being. It's so wonderful to see how your, journey has evolved over these last, 25, 30 years I've known you.
Thank
Um,
you.
and it's amazing that you have a practice of, you know, 45 minutes to 60 minutes every day for yourself. And, for some, when when I even tell them that, my practice in the morning is similarly long, it can be off-putting. It's like, I don't have that much time in my life to focus on myself. Well, start with 10, start with 5.
Right.
You know, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. You won't know it until you actually taste it, breathe it, feel it. So it's wonderful that, and just like you, as I said, this has become the work of my day. When I do this, everything in my day reflects it. I'm much more centered in the ICU. I'm much more aware of um, my interactions with my patients. Even when they don't speak, I know exactly when they come in to the room what they are struggling with without having said a word to them, or them having said a word to me. These non-verbal sort of means of relating to others, they become so powerful in our lives. You have great compassion, you have great empathy, just like you do, for the other, because you've seen it in yourself, you see it in the other. And it starts with a small 5-10 minute practice, but as I said, everyone has to come to this at their own time in their own life. um, and they will find the teacher when they are ready for it.
So true. Yeah, so true. And I'm so grateful that you have been my teacher in many instances about these wonderful practices. But you bring up such a great point, Amit, because there are times now, and I'm not a young dude. I've been doing this stuff for a little bit, but I'll be harried and I'll start off in the morning like, oh man, I got all this stuff to do. And maybe I don't use an alarm clock, so maybe I slept in till 4:30 or something. But I'll wake up and I'll think about the things that I have to do, and it'll just be swirling. And I need to consciously slow that down. So sometimes my practice is 5 or 10 minutes. You and I talked about a specific type of breath that I'll do for a few minutes, and then I'll do some intentions, and I'll go through my gratitude, things that I'm grateful for, and it'll be 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll get on with my day. Um, and so I think it's important for everyone to understand who's listening that you don't have to start at the end. You don't. You start at the very beginning, and you start with the simple stuff. And you mentioned it. It's a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and sometimes the step is a baby step.
Yep.
Sometimes the step is, you know what? I'm going to try to pay attention to my breath for a minute
Yep.
or for 30 seconds, and I'm going to go about my day. The key is, I've found with my practices and how I've gone through this experience over the years, is consistency is the key. Being consistent is the key. 30 seconds, 6 days a week, you're rocking. And you can bump that up to 45 in a minute. And as time goes on, your experience will deepen. And then the time, I'll get up at 4:15. I'll get up at 4. I'll get up so that I make the time to do these things. And I know you're an advocate of that sort of way of looking at it.
Yes, I completely agree. It's like any good habit, or even any bad habit. It takes 42 days and 42 nights to cultivate one.
Mm.
Uh, but it does take discipline, it does take effort. But the beauty of the practice is that, especially for breath work, the more breath aware you are, the more breath aware you will want to be. So it's
Mm.
a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways. That just by paying attention to your breath, right now you and I are speaking. if we just shut our eyes and just paid attention to the in and the out through the nose, left and right, chest, belly, out nostril, just in that act of witnessing the breath rather than making it happen, your breath slows down from 15 to 8. It just slows down just like that. And then when you take control of it even more, there's the yama aspect to the pranayama tradition. You can bring real magic into the practice. So that's what I tell my students, my patients, that you start this, you do it at your own pace, but make a consistent habit of even 5 minutes once a day or twice a day, and watch what happens. It's a
I'm amazed.
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, excuse me. I am amazed, and you're so right. I went to the doctor, I don't know, it was 8 months ago, 9 months ago, something like that, and did the whole workup and sort of physical, and I have had things with and nothing bad, but just little wake ups with my heart, like, oh, blood pressure gets a little high or whatever it is. And she said to me, well, I know you're never going to die of a heart attack. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That must have something to do with the work, right? Like that it really is. It reverberates through the ethers, but it also reverberates through every cell in our body and allows us to be healthier, and that thirst that our cells have is quenched. And that's just I was fascinated when she said that. I was like, all right, that's cool. I mean, I know I'm going somehow, but it's not going to be that. That's fine. Anyway,
that's awesome.
Like that, Amit.
You got 120 years in you, my friend.
Well, I want to show everybody this, and I know it's on Amit's sweatshirt as well, but this is the Breathinance logo, which is beautiful. I love it. I wear this all the time. And obviously Amit has that on and on his wall as well. But can you tell everybody what that depicts and what that represents? Because I think that's just such a beautiful way of portraying what you do.
So that's actually a tree. If you look at it, from a distance, you'll get the glimpse of the image of a tree. It turns out that's the radiographic image of your tracheobronchial tree. So if I had to do bronchoscopy in you and, I was putting a tube down your throat and I had to go down the airway, that's what your tracheobronchial tree would look like. It arborizes just like the branches of a tree all the way into smaller tubes, smaller branches until it reaches the alveolus, which is the gas exchange unit of the lung for oxygen uptake and CO2 output. And there's the meditator practicing underneath the tree of life or the tree of breath. So it's you as the practitioner of breath, enlivening that tree, that whole system that arborizes through the autonomic nervous system in human physiology. So that's what it represents, breathinance.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love that depiction because it tells us, the inside world and the outside world mirror each other, right? In terms of how we experience the world and that the world mirrors us and we mirror the world. And I just, when you first showed that to me, I absolutely loved it. So what's the best way to find Breathinance and to find you, and how do we get people going on this breath work?
So we have the website. It's called breathinance.com. Breath, resonance, one word, breathonance, breathonance.com. And anyone can log in. It's a repository of 66 capsules, video, audio, some written instructions. For the naive student who's never sort of been exposed to breath work to get interested in learning how to breathe, it's a course that one can subscribe to for a fee. And there are 7 lessons, if you will, each broken down into 4 subsegments, with, as I said, instruction, starting from week 1, ending to week 7. And I normally say don't do it every week, but give yourself some time to sort of really get comfortable with the progression of breath work, and do it over 2 months, do it over 3 months, so that you understand all that is being taught. And this is a tradition that is not new. I mean, this is 6,000 years old. All right, it's clearly stood the test of time, but the way I have put it out over there is, as I said, with the emphasis on science and safety. So you learn these practices with the basic tenets of what science has validated, on these traditions, and they're all set to music. So at the end of the program, you'll have breathwork practice which you can sort of download and practice to music. The online community that we're hoping to create is through instruction every quarter. I'm going to be teaching these lesson plans every quarter to anyone who wants to sort of, learn across the globe online. There's also a freemium app that's coming out in a couple of months, which you can download. Breathonance will be the app where you can just practice to your own ratio, your resonant rhythm, as I like to say. And then if there's an interest, once you do that practice, you can come and learn all the tenets of breathwork online. We also hope to do live retreats, live workshops. In the US, we've just come back from India and Dubai, Abu Dhabi, where we had done, a couple of big workshops. But the intention is to build a community of breathers, more mindful breathers. So that's why I've called it breathfulness, just to play on the word mindfulness, learning how to mindfully breathe in the tradition that is pranayama. So breathonance.com.
It's beautiful. It really is just a beautiful thing. And when you were going through those, how many breaths we take in a minute or a day or a lifetime, like, what? It's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And when you were talking about us paying attention to our breath as we're speaking, I was doing that, and it does slow down. It really, it's amazing when I'm out there practicing my breath work in the morning, and then I go into my meditation, and I have never timed anything, but my breath slows down to such a degree. It's just a fascinating phenomenon. So I want to say from my heart, and I know Christina and Andrew, thank you so much for teaching us and for continuing our relationship over these many years. It's been a wonderful thing, and I so much appreciate you coming on. You're doing wonderful work out there in the world, and thank you for that as well.
Oh, thank you so much to you both and Andrew, and I'm so grateful, our paths crossed. You're my teacher, just like I am your teacher. My students, my patients are my biggest teachers. They inform the way I teach, the way I learn, the way I research. So I'm so grateful, and I'm so happy that you've been able to stay with this practice for so long. And I just wish you lifetimes of good health and joy, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. And anyone listening, please visit breathonance.com. And again, just in case you didn't catch it or didn't get a chance to write it down, breathonance.com. And I will also have that in the show notes with a link, so you can jump right to it. Thanks again, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Daryl.
If you've enjoyed When I Stop Fighting the podcast, please check out my books and my journals on my website, DarylDittmer.com. Enjoy a 15% discount by using the code PODCAST, DARYLDITTM.